I suspect this will go quickly unless you guys have a whole lot to tell us.
No.
Okay, which is fine. I'm going to ask that we keep this as standard
You guys
agenda
are
item,
live.
okay? So, all right, we're on?
Yes, you follow.
Okay, it is, what, 5 o'clock straight up, and, what is the date? January 22nd, and I'd like to open the CRCRC meeting. Call to order. Let's start with roll call.
Tom Farrell.
Alex Robinette.
Jay Van Bavel.
Dave Bench.
Duke Garwood.
All right.
And remotely, Brian Ryder.
Thank you for joining us, Brian. Good.
Well, I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I guess I could, but I might give you all COVID, and that's probably not what you want from me today.
Well, there are other things we would rather have from you, yes. Okay, roll call. Is any public comments that we need to, okay? No reason to open that up. We have the consent agenda. I trust that each of you have had an opportunity to check last meeting's minutes and decide which were really well written. That was a riveting document, I may say.
Except for one exception.
Okay.
It's titled agenda and not minutes. It needs to, that.
Oh, is that what it says
It
on there?
confused me for a few minutes.
Ah.
But it just needs, I
So
think,
that
to
might
be
need
corrected.
changed?
So I can fix that, and
Yeah.
then, if you guys just wanna go ahead and you can pass it with that
Okay.
change.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have one other thing.
I'll second.
I thought that Jay had said that he would chair, that he voted yay on the vote for him heading the committee on trees. Did you abstain from that?
Yeah, abstain.
You did?
Yeah.
I missed that. All right, well, very good. Well, then I guess agenda's the only thing that needs to change.
Well, I did have one question on several of the unanimous votes. I wasn't here in person, so I'm not exactly sure, but wasn't there a no on some of the votes?
No.
Okay. Maybe it's a
No.
time lapse on the.
All right,
on this
yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, it was an amazingly successful meeting, I think. Thank you all. So, do I have a motion on?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Okay.
Well, you gotta make that one change, Jay.
With the amendment.
With,
Oh.
with?
The amended
Ma-
change.
With the amendment changing it from agenda to minutes.
And I'll second that.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes carry. Very good. We're into regular agenda, item number 3, a discussion and possible action regarding city council response to 1/17/24 CRCRC recommendation preview.
Did we check that Brian voted on the minutes? Did Brian vote on the minutes?
Yes, he did.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And may I say that yeah, I went to city council meeting. I know that at least one of you had tuned in during the meeting. It went at least as smoothly as I hoped that it would go, maybe even smoother than that. So I'll give you a little bit of a rundown here, just major item by major item. Whenever we talked about building height, there were no surprises there. 35 feet seemed to be well accepted, and they recognized that we're working hard to come up with what method we want to use to measure that. The exposed foundation, that went well, recognizing that in fact it was not a regular formal item on the survey, but that there were enough people that had mentioned it that it was worth looking at, and it's something we might want to do something about. The setbacks got a bit more discussion, and I did call attention to the fact that in fact that people, a majority of the folks, or more of the people who had responded, were okay with setbacks being the way that they were, but we, as a group, decided that there were some changes that would be worth doing. And what their big response to, we had a little bit of discussion around the 15 and the 12 and a half and all that. We didn't get bogged down into it too much, but what they had suggested is that going forward, when we say we want to do something and it isn't supported by the survey response, that we say so. and that we just think, as a committee, think that this is a good idea, and we're putting it forward because either it hangs nicely with other recommendations that we're doing, or just by itself, it is something we think that is worth doing. We're looking in the codes and we want to make a change here. So as long as we're upfront about that, they're fine with it. So it really became, I think, a non-issue. I'm really happy with the way that worked. The driveways discussion, the only question came up is there a safety aspect to this that we ought to review with the police department? I intend to do that, spend the time with, I guess, our chief of police and see whether or not they have any problems with this. Otherwise, they don't have any problems with it.
Question. We have probably 10, 15 corner driveways now.
Oh, maybe. I think fewer than 5, actually.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Well, we have multiple driveways.
We do have multiple.
Multiple driveways,
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
On that. Okay. I was trying to think how many of them were cornered. and
There
that's
are there are fewer than 5 corner
Okay.
driveways. There are at least 3, and I think there are 4, actually. So
Yeah,
maybe you walked the neighborhood really well.
I haven't counted, but I also don't foresee it as something that people are gonna be eager to do. You know, I don't think there's gonna be a big uptick in people wanting, you know, I think it's
Oh, no.
available if somebody does want it is the purpose of the rule, but I don't think that
Right.
there's a big concern that, I think just in terms of safety and the idea of somebody using a driveway to cut off from one street to another, that doesn't seem to, I think that would slow them down.
Okay.
So, that's all.
Okay. When we got into the trees, we got a bit of discussion here, and the question came up as to why our 51% tree ordinance,
We
well,
skipped
my
fences.
51% tree ordinance, didn't match the, what was it, 57 or 58%?
56 point something.
50, yeah, that was in the Bowie summary. And I didn't really have a good reason. You know, I told him, I thought, well, maybe it's a typo. I don't have to go back and look at the numbers. Since then, I know you've all seen what I had sent back to them, and it was just a matter of how we did the calculation. We and Bowie are both right. It's really not Bowie's responsibility to provide an analysis anyway. We are the analyzers here, and we can stand on that. I did get a couple of responses back from City Council, thank yous for that, and I think I have to watch that. You know, do the numbers match, you know, when they're, I should have had the other one right in front of me and just looked, oh, well, I can see now, but didn't. And, let's see, was there anything else? And lighting, they were good with letting us wait until the commercial corridor lighting recommendation comes out, and then we can start working on that in earnest. Oh, one other thing about trees, I did bring up that there seemed to be a lot of public energy around the possibility of having some trees planted in the
Right-of-ways.
the right-of-ways, and thank you. And I'm not sure whether there's confusion around that, but one of the council people was concerned that, you know, well, if we put them in the right-of-ways and they're liable to get cut down for some reason later on, that they may actually be in the way of utilities or whatever. And I countered that, you know, if you go down Rollingwood Drive, there's an awful lot of trees in the right-of-ways. It's not a big deal. I mean, you know, you would be judicious in the way you plan it. And we didn't get into a lot of discussion around it, but there was a sensitivity there that I didn't expect. And so whenever we go forward with whatever recommendations we do on that, I think we need to be cognizant of that.
Well, it was my impression that the discussion of putting trees in the right-of-way was a separate issue from rewriting the tree ordinance.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay, so that's not in our purview at this point.
I'll tell you what, Jay, if you want to put it in there, do. You're open, yeah, do it. You know, I mean, and if you don't, that's okay too. I think, you know, your assignment, such as it is, is to look at trees holistically, the whole situation, and make your recommendations on what you feel is right. It's a big one, let's face it. There's a lot there.
Dave, how did that issue come up? Trees in right of way.
How did it come up about putting trees in the right-of-ways?
It was
There
a
was-
question on the survey.
There is a question in the survey, and it's very supported. I think there's like 80% are for it.
Okay.
Or for doing something, right? There was a discussion earlier in the city council meeting about planting trees in the park. And the Parks Group the Parks Commission is looking at having trees planted and being sponsored by folks, possibly with even a memoriam tag on them or something else. And there's a lot of discussion. Some people like that idea. Other people think, well, we don't want to turn it into a memorial park and so on. And when I was in the middle of this discussion here about trees, I said, here's an idea I'm just having right now that maybe instead of, populating the park with a bunch of memorial trees, maybe you could put them in the right-of-ways or do this thing. And that's what started the discussion. I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of acceptance or, I didn't think there was a lot of excitement around the idea, but it was just something I threw out.
Well, and I think backing up, it came up just in terms of, there's a sense that the canopy is dwindling with the construction, and how can you build back in that canopy in a way that, I think also in terms of walkability of the streets is a topic that's come up a lot in Rollingwood, reducing heat, like there's all of these benefits. So if we can't, quote, require people to plant trees, what could Rollingwood do as a city to
Right.
improve the canopy?
I guess my question was, Dave, did you bring that up or did the city council bring it up?
Okay.
That's
I
really where
brought
I was
it
trying
up.
to get it up. Oh, okay.
I brought it up. It was me.
Sorry.
But in response to something that had happened earlier in the meeting.
Alex,
It just seemed like a,
You're
seemed like
good
an
with all
line
that.
we had.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I was being an opportunist.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
I just was wondering.
I
So-
wanted to backtrack on a couple of
Sure.
points that I thought I heard
Okay.
discussed. If one of which there was a bit of discussion about changing the 20-foot corner side setback.
Yes.
And so I didn't know if that was something we wanted to talk about. And then something that I've been thinking about is the idea of pools in the setback. And I
Uh-huh.
wanted to have some discussion about that.
I don't believe that really got any discussion
That one
in
didn't
city
get
council.
much,
That
yeah.
did,
Yeah.
it got raised eyebrows, but it didn't
Mhm.
really, nobody really pushed back, which, to my surprise.
Yeah. I think that there was,
The-
in general, they were just absorbing things without.
That's right. The 20 feet or 15 feet between houses got countered a little bit with,
Mhm.
well, why are you having such large overhangs? Like, maybe you ought to push the overhangs back.
Mhm.
And I just kind of put that aside. I didn't respond to it. And why 15 feet? And the answer was because, well, we thought we'd test you on it.
Mhm.
That we could have said 12 and a half, but here's an opportunity here. Let's lay out 15, see what kind of response you, city council, have to that, and we can make our recommendation accordingly. If we need to ratchet it back, we could. So, anything else, Alex, that maybe I missed?
We skipped over fences, but I don't remember.
They were
Real
good with the 8
conversation
feet,
about
and
that,
yeah,
yeah.
and also the Board of Adjustment piece. I think
Yeah.
they were fine with the way that we're presenting it.
Okay.
So the pools, Alex?
The concern for me, in thinking about it, and this came up, and I'm looking at some recent builds. One of the things that the pool does when it's within the building setback is it controls the size of the building. And if we were to allow people to push the pool further from the building setback, then I think we're going to get bigger buildings. It's just, something we need to think about and discuss because
Sure.
we're
Well-
not controlling the size of buildings by impervious cover or FAR currently. And the pool is
a
is
good
kind of a
point.
mitigating
Yeah.
element.
I think that what we did this right in suggesting that we explore,
Yeah.
trading the 5 feet and explore allowing pools.
Mhm.
You know, this came up really kind of the discussion pretty recently. And we really haven't, what do we really want to do with that, you know? But they didn't have a lot of trouble with the idea that, well, we're looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say, well, I
That's
won't.
a good
Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
know,
understand
that
that point.
there's a domino effect with the
Because if you're not
pool setback.
Yeah.
adding FAR,
Mm-hmm.
you could have some unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So that might be, I don't know, you know, these recommendations originated with the group at large, but kind of, we kind of got them into this kind of format with Alex, Duke, and myself. Maybe we need to meet again at that point, or we need to spin off somebody else to look at it. I'll call a meeting.
Well, hey, we're still exploring.
That's right.
Alex, I just want to make one comment about the tree canopy, going back to your thought. And, you know, having talked to residents and hearing them in some figurative way describe the tree canopy, it's all about the streetscape.
Mm-hmm.
And trees in the right of way, great perception that there's a wonderful tree canopy. Now, you don't do that without kind of looking at utilities and all the things that go hand in hand. But I think it's an important thing that our tree canopy is more strongly perceived through the streetscape than any other position, any other stance perspective.
We would have to make a change in some of our other ordinances with that, because right now, it's a 12-foot limit. You have to have 12-foot clearance under your, at the curb. And if the tree is in our right-of-way,
Mm-hmm.
there's an issue about whose responsibility it is to cut that or not. So we'd have to, right now, Rollingwood generally considers that, rightly or wrongly, if it's in front of your house, it's yours, and you have to cut it and keep it 12 foot. That's never been adjudicated, which I'm glad, because I'm pretty sure that if it's in the right of way, you as a property owner don't really have a legal responsibility to trim that, but
I think the code right now says that if there's a thing in front of your house effectively, you have to maintain that 14 foot to allow,
is it 12 or
it's
14?
14, 14, and to allow trucks to get under it,
Yeah.
and garbage trucks in particular,
Yeah.
I think. And, you know, we could do something with that, you know, add to it or change it, I don't know.
I think we just need to make sure that if we make that recommendation, we also add that who's gonna maintain the clearance as
Okay.
these grow, because 10 years from now, when some of these reach maturity enough to where they have limbs over the street, somebody's gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
As I understand it now, you can plant a tree in the right of way. It's just that if they have to take it out down the road for some reason, then you're out of luck. But you can plant trees within the right of way currently.
Yeah, you can't, only at the corner, there's it's a circle that you gotta be back from at the corner of if you're on a street corner or corner
Okay.
lot, you have to, and it's having to do about visibility. But I think you're right, I think, you know, within the right of way, you're allowed to do it.
I don't think we have an ordinance that says you can do that. I think we just have never made that an issue. We don't care.
Right.
I think
Because
that's
in
what-
my house, we removed a tree from the right of way, a protected tree, and we replaced it in the right of way
Yeah.
with a protected tree.
Right.
So I think we did follow the rules.
And that feels like the right thing, I mean.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, let's not pass any rules that say you're not allowed to do that.
Well, the canopy, I think, is incredibly important for our city. And we have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to mitigate oak wilt to
Mhm.
keep our tree canopies in Rollingwood.
Yeah.
And we still have 2 outbreaks, I think two or three right now in Rollingwood.
Well, another issue is power lines,
Yeah,
and when, I know this has come up a lot, but when we have power lines that are on the front, what are the options for possibly burying power lines and they go across the front? Because that makes planting trees, I mean, they're like destroying heritage trees, the city, to account for power
Alex,
lines, like, or we can't plant trees under the power lines, so.
Alex, we used to have a bookcase right here that had all the studies that Rolling Wood has ever done. One of those studies was an analysis of burying power lines.
Which I understand
And it was,
geologically is a problem.
Oh, it was, there were two issues that I recall. This has been 20-some years ago. One is the overall cost. Two was when power goes out on an underground line, it's out for a long time if there's a problem there, because it's
Well, I would
hard
think
to
it
get
would go out less
to. Well,
because of its being
you're
protected.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, tree limbs obviously not gonna get it, but most of the houses would, I mean, there's a lot of, there were, one, how deep you go and where you go and how it gets to the house was an issue, as I recall. Secondly, there was an issue of the overall cost of putting that in. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
That would be 100% our cost.
But was that cost looking at all the power lines? Because they're, I mean, you can't replace the ones that are going behind houses. Like, that's just not an option. But I would think that along the street, I mean, we're already digging in the street all the time, Google fiber and water lines and everything, replacing sewer lines. So I just wonder.
We as I recall, it was a citywide analysis that was done. It was fairly short.
How many houses are there that have the power lines in their front yard?
Yeah.
I can't think
Not
of
that many. Well, there's down Bettis, because I see this beautiful heritage oak that's
Okay.
just, the whole middle of it's cut out for the power lines,
The big wedge.
the big wedge.
Yeah.
I think
Wallace
there's some
also has
down,
power lines in the right of way, or in the front of the houses.
I missed the first part of what you
Say it
said.
again?
I said Wallace also has power lines in the front of some houses.
Okay, thank you.
And remember, on those power lines is also some of the cable and internet companies tie in too. So you'd have to put a conduit and make arrangements to where they do that now. Now they have 18 inches separating the power from the telephone and cable.
Right.
But there was a question, as I recall, whether or not you could put the cable and the electric in the same conduit. There was some issue about
You
interference,
can't
electric
do that.
interference
Yeah, you
and
can't do that.
cable stuff.
Gotcha.
It's,
All right, well,
But I you know, we've
So-
looked at it. That's
Okay,
all I
it's a
can tell you. It
magnetic
was
field
too
that is,
expensive
yeah.
at the time to do it. But that's, we're richer now.
well, and I think if it weren't quite so encompassing, if we're looking at trying to shade streets and the power lines are impacting some percentage, what if we were to address just that? Is that even feasible? That's all.
Well,
It may be.
seems like regardless of, there's probably opportunity here regardless.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I'm gonna bring one
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I like to bring this up as often as possible because we proposed this to some of the cable companies too. We have a lot of abandoned water lines in Rollingwood. And we actually made a proposal to Google at one time to use those old water lines as conduit so they could put in, they wouldn't have to tear up the streets to get across these streets on that. They didn't end up doing it, but
yeah. Well, the way Google's gonna do this, whenever they do come through, is they're just gonna put a groove right in front of the curb. And they're just gonna bury their optical fiber just 6 inches below, and it'll be pretty much no muss, no fuss.
One thing I'd like to just say about that is in Circle C, where they've done that, there is now a inch divot because it's sunk down, and it's dangerous for bicyclists. So I hope there's something in that plan to fill that to grade or even a little
Really
bit
good
of
There
both.
is, they're trying to do this in conjunction with the water line project so that whenever things get repaved, everything gets repaved after all the work is finished,
One time.
one time.
But you're not gonna be paving that whole street, you're just gonna be a strip paving.
I think that some of the streets are gonna pave the whole thing, depending on the condition of the street,
Well.
yeah. Okay, can we move on?
Yes.
I know that, some of y'all have a short fuse. Is there any more that we wanted to say about this presentation to council?
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Appreciate your having a look at it and the help with getting it together. There,
So what are next steps from that conversation?
well, I was gonna handle that later, but,
Okay.
but,
Cover it later.
yeah. I think it's kind of a keep on keeping on, Jeff, really. There's a lot of stuff that is a bit more open-ended than other things. So I do intend to do the same presentation or something very much like it to P and Z next month. Okay.
Great.
Okay, so let's move on to, if it's all right with everybody, we're gonna move on to, item number 4, discussion and possible action on the tree subcommittee progress report.
Okay, I'll do that. First, I want to thank Alex and Duke for serving with me on this committee. They've done a lot of work on it already, and I think we're making good progress. We are operating under the assumption that retaining and maintaining a healthy tree canopy in Rollingwood is very important to the city residents, as was reflected in the survey results. We are trying to strike a right balance between protecting our existing tree canopy, maintaining or encouraging privacy between homes, and allowing for appropriate redevelopment that is consistent with the character and expectations of the community. Although slightly more than half the respondents felt the current tree ordinance is adequate to the task, depending on what your figures show, many of the yes respondents had comments to the effect that either they were not sure what the tree ordinance really contained, they had no occasion to apply the tree ordinance in the recent past, or were concerned about its implementation. Therefore, we are reviewing in detail the current Rollingwood residential tree canopy management ordinance and comparing it to those from some surrounding municipalities, including Austin, Westlake, and Leander. We are incorporating some changes to our draft revision based on elements found in other cities' ordinance, but I want to emphasize we are not trying to mirror those ordinances, as Rollingwood has a unique set of circumstances as regards to maintaining our current tree canopy. We are about 3/4 of the way through our draft revision, and we'll hopefully have something specific to present to the CRCRC for review at the next meeting in 2 weeks.
Cool.
That might depend somewhat on whether we're going to...
Recording in progress.
That might depend somewhat on whether we're going to incorporate this idea of the city planting trees in the right-of-way. And I need to discuss that with my subcommittee members before we take that on. My personal feeling is that's kind of a separate, that's a city function and not really a residential tree ordinance issue, but we'll just talk about it and see if we want to take that on as well.
Good.
And that's the progress.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds like good progress.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, anybody to add to that?
Jay did an amazing job. He's been very organized. He's a
Ooh.
good
Oh.
taskmaster.
Oh, yeah.
He's set the bar for.
He did.
Great. I know that this whole idea, and it is, again, this is a very complicated area that we're working here. I know it's in good hands. It's great. Thank you.
Well, and I'll say too, I mean, I think we're trying to keep it simple, not, though might be adding, we're not trying to overcomplicate it. And some jurisdictions are just good guidelines for not what to do also.
Okay. Right. Okay. Including ours.
Yeah.
All right. Any more on that? Then we'll move on. Discussion, item number 5, Discussion and possible action on the building height / envelope subcommittee progress report.
Well,
We're formed.
we have a group.
We have a group. There we go.
But we have not met, and that is partly my fault for not being on it, so my apologies. But we have exchanged some correspondence. We have kind of a list of things that we plan to tackle. Primarily the definition of how do we measure the 35-foot height. I have spent a bunch of time researching lots of cities in the country that use the parallel plane and how they do it. And so I've been cataloging and inventorying all of these. And it's a pretty popular method. And it's clean, it's easy, it's pretty straightforward. Just like Duke said, we're not trying to overcomplicate it, we're trying to simplify it. I think there's still some nuance, and thinking about some of the homes in Rollingwood that we've all looked at and said, well, gosh, yeah, they seem to have gone above 35 feet in some areas, but it doesn't have an impact, and that maybe there's a grade from the street and it's partially carved out where people can't really see it and it's set back, that, you know, we might want to find kind of an opportunity to allow some people some grace when the existing grade potentially was always going to have a 35-foot house, but once they carve part of that out and it's not in the public right of way, which is sort of a phrase we've been using that might apply. And I've done some analysis of some of the homes in Rollingwood. You know, one came before us as a concern that the owner felt that their house couldn't have been built because it would have exceeded the 35-foot rule. But I have the drawings and I've analyzed it and looked at it, and it turns out that that house would be compliant. It doesn't exceed the 35-foot rule, particularly when you're measuring the high point from the nearest adjacent grade. And so those are all the things that we're going to have to work on, the language. There's also a house that we've all looked at that has come up that would not meet this criteria. In fact, there's a couple of those. Then the other piece of what we're looking at is also this side setback plane, which is also popular in other cities. And, you know, it's obviously in Austin, and again, it's very complicated, too many, you know, details and options. So we're trying to find a way to really simplify that. Maybe just setting a maximum height along the setback. And if our setbacks move, if we go from 10 foot to 15, you know, we have to have some rule that adapts with that. And so that, because if you have a 10-foot side setback and a 15 side setback, and you do what Austin does, where you go up 15 feet and you have a 45-degree angle, well, your wall heights are going to be different just by virtue of the setback. In Austin, I think the setbacks are the same. So we have to maybe come up with a number that allows the
We're
wall
comfortable
height to
with.
stay the same, irrespective of the setback, potentially. And then also, like with corner lot rules, if we do change it to 20 feet for a corner lot, we have to talk about what, you know, height restrictions that might have, because it too would be at a different side setback. So,
Do you want to go in assuming that, or do we need to tighten that recommendation up, or what do you think?
well, I think we all need to discuss it in
Yeah,
our.
I think we'll be prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, look, all the work that Alex has done for this background analysis, et cetera, I think once we have an opportunity to really sit down and meet, it's gonna go pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Jay did the same thing. It was,
Yeah.
shoot. I mean, in 1 hour, we got 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah. And another piece of that also is that I've looked at a lot with other cities is side articulation.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these things overlap. And so our goal is to find the fewest number of rules that correspond to the desired outcome
Yeah.
of what people are asking
Alex,
for. So.
pardon me, what is side articulation?
Side articulation is, I'm just trying to see if there's a good definition.
You can't have one long blank wall.
That's
So
tall, yeah.
over whatever number you describe in terms of linear feet of flat wall, you've got to offset, at 30 feet, you've got to offset 4 feet, run 10
Okay.
feet or 15 linear feet, whatever you pick
So
or
no
choose.
barracks is,
No barracks, yeah.
Yeah.
So that you
Okay.
have shadow and light and play, and you're just kind of articulating the bulk because it's very,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And there's side wall articulation and there's horizontal articulation as well.
So that you can't maybe not maximize the entire building side with a 2-story volume that's basically flat. So that maybe it has to step down and become a single story at some point, or, so. Yeah, we're on it.
Cool.
We're gonna meet when everybody's healthy and
Do you think you'll have anything for next meeting?
Yeah.
Good.
For sure.
All right. Let me ask you both, is it okay if we leave these 2 discussion items as a standing items on the agenda
mhm,
until we get to a point where we're actually starting to make recommendations out of them?
mhm.
Yes.
Good, thank you, we'll do that. All right, any more discussion around the building height envelope subcommittee stuff? No? Good, moving on. Okay, item number 6, discussion and possible action on draft recommendations. I know Jeff had asked about this a second ago, and why we put this in here was if these 2 subcommittees had something to bring forward, we would start talking right now about incorporating those, adding those recommendations into the list that we currently have, okay? So that's gonna be a standing item, I think, too, at least for a while. The other thing is, with your permission, I would like to take the driveway ordinance, or the recommendation for the driveway ordinance, to the next Planning and Zoning Commission and say, we, as a committee, think that this ordinance needs to come off the books. This is our recommendation to do that, and see if they will take it, if we can get them to take it forward as a motion and pass. There's a couple reasons I want to do it. 1, because I think we got it decided anyway, and 2, I want to get the momentum going. Here we go. We're on the books. We're
So
happening.
they'll take it piecemeal, so for example, if the tree ordinance draft, recommendations were ready before the building height, we could
No.
submit that.
I think it's meant to be comprehensive. I mean, doing that, if we do take it piecemeal, it means we're writing code consistently. It's because if we do just driveways in that component, that may affect a certain other part of the code. And so once we have all the recommendations, that's when you take it forward. And then we go and write the code for it. Just, yeah.
Nikki, you
Okay.
thinking of the universal building code application, how that applies to some of this as
No.
well as our other, 'cause I
No,
think-
I'm just thinking about, in correlation, yeah, so in correlation like of how we were doing the comprehensive, commercial, if we were just to take one component of that and take that forward, and then say we were just doing trees for commercial, just think about that, and how many different sections that actually touches. So it's kind of like we would be doing this over and over and over.
So would it be bad to do this, Dave, like you did with the city council, where you kind of sound them out about what their feelings are on something like this, but not asking them to take a stand, official stand?
I think that's fine, Tom. I planned to do, as I said, this or a very similar presentation to P and Z at the upcoming meeting. I was hoping to at least bring that one item forward, which I think is really pretty unrelated to almost anything else. But if it's an issue, I'm not sure I understand why it is, because it is literally the simplest thing we have here, that is remove the ordinance from the current set of ordinances. That's all it is.
Okay, I mean, that may be just some discussion that we
Yeah.
need to ask Bryce, maybe on how those different things touch, or asking Ashley and Desiree about that. But that's just my opinion and
Dave,
thought
some of these things
processes.
come into both zoning and building code, the
Yeah.
two sections on that, and it gets to be, I understand what Nikki's saying, cause there are some, we have like setbacks on
Right.
driveways
Right.
are part of the setback issue that we'll be dealing with. And that's totally different and,
I think it ought to all happen at once,
Okay.
not piecemeal.
Would it be possible to just make a motion that it be approved to be in our final comprehensive recommendations for ordinance changes? And then we don't have to bring it up anymore?
That's fine.
That sounds like a good idea.
Or you do take that forward, you know, to P and Z, and then, you know, when you give them that update, I mean, it doesn't have to be the exact same update you just gave council. I mean, it's a work in progress, so as things change and you do take this forward, say you take it forward next month, or you don't take it until March, that's a lot of work that you guys have done. So things may change and you take that forward to them, they'll give you that same information that council did, you know, of kind of what their temperature is, and then that will help direct you as well. And it's, of course, it's always something, you know, again, once you get that information, if that is a low-hanging fruit and that is something that, you know, everybody does believe can just be knocked out, then that's, you know, something that we can do. However, I do know that with changing the code, that's gonna be hearings, that's gonna be postings in the newspaper, it's gonna be notices that we have to send out, and all of that. So if we can combine all that into one and do that, I think that it would be a cost effective.
Dave, one advantage to having this from a standpoint of just getting, as an informational deal to the P and Z is, it would count as a, not official, but it would count as a public notice that's going out to people that we're looking at making some changes on this, what those
Yeah.
changes are. So, I mean, I don't see a downside to that part. In fact, I see a lot of upside to it, because I think that's the way we should operate. But, I think I would prefer, like, Duke said, I would prefer to just wait to do a comprehensive deal before we come through on
Okay.
everything. Make sure that it's all not,
Bless you. Thank you.
there's not some relationship that we're missing on that.
Okay, all right. Well, I didn't want to do it without getting the support of this group here, and it sounds like we want to, like the insurance people say, we want to bundle it.
Bundle it.
So it'll be part of the bundle, but I will bring it up.
Good.
And I will try to educate P and Z on where we are as best I can, all right? And I think we even have one more meeting between then and now, between now and the next P and Z meeting, which is, we may actually have some more fruit to talk about.
And I think you can communicate progress in a significant way.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, without throwing out one change, I mean, okay, we're changing the driveway orders immediately.
Right, right. Yeah, it's not like it's not an important issue to begin with. It's probably the least most important of this mess. But
What did we decide on lighting? Did we make a subcommittee?
We did.
we,
Yeah, and
Well,
that, you're on that?
I think
Yeah.
that the bottom line was is that we wanted to make sure that the commercial corridor thing got air first.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we were gonna use that as at least a starting point for any discussion.
Okay.
So I didn't wanna do anything before we saw that.
There's, just so you know where that is, we have a couple of a couple of little issues that we have to, a couple of notes that we have to thrash out on the commercial corridor deal with lighting prior to giving that out. And then a copy will be sent to each of us on that.
Okay. And I've been coming across in all my research in all these other cities.
Thank you for that.
And I'll just start, making a list of those and share them with you. And
So
they're
I don't know
simplified.
whether we did actually finalize a subcommittee. I
I
don't
think-
know.
I thought it was Brian and myself.
Okay, well, we can, if it's worth doing, we can finalize it this evening, because I don't think it was voted on. Let's wait for the commercial corridor stuff to come out,
Yeah. I
okay?
think that would probably be
Very
best,
good,
too.
all right. I don't have anything else that I want to add to this item. Does anybody else have anything they want to say about recommendations, or where we are, or what we want to add or take away from them?
Do you feel like there's anything that needs to be changed or edited based on council input? Or go with it as is? Keep it as is.
Yeah, I'm pretty much, I probably will say more words around this stuff, but for the most part, I don't really see a problem.
Okay,
It did not get a hell no,
okay.
and we're all right.
I have
you
one
know?
little minor thing on your recommendations.
Yeah.
You talk about heritage trees being measured at 4 feet, and all the rest of the code is 4.5 feet.
Uh-huh.
So that's what we're putting in there for
Okay,
heritage trees, so you might just change that to 4.5
I
feet.
can do that.
4'6".
All right.
Breast height, 4 feet.
I thought we had come up with 4 feet,
Yeah.
but
No,
that's
but
okay.
he's
4.5 is
right.
okay.
All the other codes say 54 inches or,
That's fine. I certainly don't have any trouble with that. I don't think the trees care.
no,
Uh,
they haven't talked to you.
Okay. Let's see, moving along here, we have item number 7, discussion and possible action on future meeting dates and agenda topics for discussion. Now, we're meeting this evening because of the Rolling Wood Women's Club meeting is tomorrow evening, and it's gonna be attended by the mayor and by Alex. And we didn't wanna burden her with 2 meetings on the same day. And we wanted her as sharp as a tack whenever she does attend a women's. So in case she has to defend our actions, she is ready and able to do so. So.
And capable.
Okay. So that's why we're meeting this evening, and I wish you luck. I hope it goes well. I hope people ask you lots of questions.
They may not ask any questions, but I will be there.
And I'm glad you will be. That's great. Our next meeting is scheduled from 2 weeks from tomorrow, which would be
February 13th.
February the what?
February 13th is the next meeting.
Okay. Anybody have any problems with that?
I normally celebrate Valentine's Day one night early to avoid the crowds. I proposed to my wife on the night before Valentine's Day, so it's our anniversary.
Surprised her.
So I might not, but we'll see.
Okay.
We'll get to see your priorities here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't write that down when I proposed to my wife. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Somewhere around Christmas, but I don't remember when. So, okay.
I'm good with that.
Do we have any other business that we need to attend to this evening? Well, I don't want to keep you here any longer than you need to be.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Second.
adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. It is 5:50, and I call this meeting adjourned.
That's a record.